Hello, story seekers. I'm Nico.
I'm Ben, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase.
Our guest for this episode describes herself as a sci-fi fantasy author and recovering podcaster. We can only apologise for causing this relapse.
Her book, The Fairy Politic, is currently on sub and imagines what would happen if we held an American-style election in the Fey Kingdoms. We would like to welcome the mind of Karin Robinson.
Hello, Karin.
Hello, Ben and Nico. It's lovely to be here.
It's absolutely gorgeous to have you here. Yeah. So we actually met in we haven't really met in person yet, but we met online because you wrote a story to one of the prompts that we put out and sent it to me whilst you were on a writing retreat, I think. Is that a fair summary?
Just a massive fan and like a needy fan. I wrote to two of my favorite podcasters and told them how much I appreciated your podcast, and also I think I shared the story that was inspired by one of your episodes, just in a fit of exuberance because I was away for the weekend doing some writing on my next book and sitting in a lovely pub called the Jolly Sailor, and had no one else around and nothing else to do except write. So I wrote a little story about the sea and thought I'd send it to you.
Well, it was good.
You'd be thrilled to know we're equally needy, and it made us feel all fluffy and nice. So I can't think it. Do it again. Do it more. Come on every week.
Oh, well, am I right in thinking that you are the vice chair of Democrats Abroad in the UK?
I'm a vice chair, but yeah, I was 2-term vice chair of Democrats Abroad, and I worked for the Democratic Party on various campaigns and so forth. But I find fantasy fiction a more pleasurable place to spend my time these days.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you find that your politics still are like heavily like baked into your writing, or is it there is that separation of church and state in your writing?
No, 100%. I always write about the things I'm worried about. And then filter them through a fantasy lens or a sci-fi lens in my latest book. So my book, The Fairy Politic, which you mentioned, was very much me worrying about how frail and fragile American democracy seems to be, and then thinking to myself, but it's almost as if we're Americans, and I say this because I am one, so I'm allowed. We can be so arrogant about our own institutions. And years ago, long before the current crisis, I had this thought of it's almost as if we've gone to some magical kingdom and we're telling them, we know how to run your country. We can fix it all, even though we understand nothing about how anything works. And then I asked myself the question, well, okay, but what magical kingdom? And then I thought, well, the funniest answer to that would be the fairy kingdom. So I wrote a book about how democracy is a beautiful idea that doesn't quite work. And what would it be like if we tried to impose it on a country that had no understanding of any of its principles or institutions? So that was my I'm worried about democracy book. And the book I'm just finished is my I'm worried about capitalism book, which is a sci-fi book with more of an AI theme. It's just kind of about how our economic systems are not working for us. So, I write about what I worry about.
I tell you what, it's a hell of a time for you to get inspiration, though. You must have books backed up forever at this stage.
So many others. No shortage. I would rather be less inspired. Would rather be less inspired and live in a better world, but here we are.
Oh God, I want that on a shirt. I think I'd rather be less inspired and live in a better world. Oh,
and then on the back, but here we are.
But here we are.
Oh. Well, I think on that note, we should probably tell some stories before we spiral into a mega capitalist depression, like the one we're in real life. So, Ben, you're going to be telling the first story this episode, and they're going to be to the prompt Mosaic. So, start putting the pieces together.
Mosaic. Edna, do you remember that spring in the lakes just before the kids? You said the bracken was an unfurling purple rug across those luscious steep hills, and I reckoned I could hear the chime of the bluebells jangled by the breeze. We lost our sticks under a bridge trying to race them, and never needed to try again. You wondered why Donald Campbell went a second time after breaking the record in 67. I said he was most likely sad to have succeeded. You joked he might have had debts. We lingered over the reflection of Ruskin's Brantwood house on Coniston Water. It was still so clear, despite being full of little waves. I said it looked like an upside-down watercolour. The old man, utterly spent from speaking, nodded off in the warm folds of her armchair. Florence smiled happily to herself as she committed his remembrance to her notebook. The window to her small room was open to the smells of the care home's garden. She preferred the itch of pollen to the medically stymied decay which was redolent on the air inside. It had been a happy surprise that such a closeness would be part of her days again, right at the end of her life. The old man's gentle taps at her door had happened like clockwork from the first day her son had finally won the battle to move her in. Florence loved the man her boy had grown to be. James was caring, passionate, and gregarious. She blamed her decline for the twitchy, neurotic person he had transformed into in the last year. He had weighed her food supplements to check she was eating properly, incessantly badgered her doctors for special attention, and pushed for support as though the whole world was coming to an end. It had occurred to her that perhaps he felt like it was ending for him. Florence, however, found it comforting that he would have a tomorrow when her last day ended, that his son would have more tomorrows, and that small parts of her memory, mannerisms, and words would be transmitted to a future she could not imagine. The carers told me the fella in room 13 is still visiting you most days, said her son the next day. I like his visits, she replied, girding herself to be wilful on the subject. Mother, it's ghoulish. He thinks you're his wife. She had this room before you. He's bloody haunting you. I think perhaps we should ask them if you can switch your room. No, I like his visits. Anyway, they've already tried to tell him that she's not here anymore, but he gets so sad only to forget it again. The only cure for loneliness is to help someone else. So thank you, but no. Are you lonely? I can visit more and bring the kids or something. James's concern radiated from him like a beacon of burning shame. I'd like that, she replied, but we're all lonely at the end, one way or the other. I know you love me, and I know the boys love me. That's more than enough. 2 gentle taps on the door were swiftly followed by Cyril's voice. Edna, don't mind if I visit, do you? Not at all, Cyril. Come in and sit down. The old man took achingly slow steps into the room and began the business of collapsing gently into his customary armchair. Each part of the movement was deliberate, cautious, and cost him substantial energy. He groaned when he was finally in place, and then methodically leant his cane against the arm of the chair. Cyril, this is James. He's visiting me today, said Florence. Hello, lad. Come to see my Edna? His voice hinted at the man he had been before infirmity ransacked his wits. His bleary eyes were filled with layers of yellow stains and burst blood vessels. The creases and lines of his face had puffed out into wattles of blotchy grey papyrus, but his smile broke through this worn facade, like a lance of sunlight through grim clouds. James hesitated, but marshalled his kindness in front of his mother's hopeful gaze. Yes, sir. Your wife is quite a woman. You're a lucky man. Lovely, yes, the old man replied vacantly as his mind wandered. Animation returned to his face after a moment, and he leaned forwards as though letting them in on a secret. Edna, do you remember when we put a garden in together for the first time? The second Cambridge house, by that big road. You worked it all out with sums and angles. I lugged the soil and dug the beds. We'd smile at each other whenever the first sign of rain came and rush to hold hands and stare out of the back door together. Or, when the sun was out, We'd go out after work and inspect the colourful life we'd helped bloom. You'd shout excitedly every time you saw a bee. Eventually, I started doing it too. The smile on Cyril's face lingered long after he fell asleep. Florence rolled her wheelchair over to the small table by her window and painstakingly wrote down what he had said. James was quiet as she did so, listening to the scratch of her pen and the shallow breathing of the sleeping old man. "Why are you writing them down?" he asked when she was done. "He's remembering them out of order, so I write them down and then fit them into the story of his life. Bit by bit, I'm learning about them, like a sort of mosaic of love. I've nearly filled this notebook. I'll make sure to bring another one next time I come," said James. Then, taking care not to disturb any of the tubes and wires fastened to her, gave his mother a hug. She didn't so much fall asleep when he left. No one falls dramatically to sleep at that age. She drifted away for a time and woke with a slight start when she heard a voice. The room was dim from the meagre dusk light seeping through her north-facing window. "Edna, are you there?" His voice sounded vulnerable, afraid. It took a moment for her to gather her tongue and her wits. "Yes, Cyril." "Do you remember that visit to Walmer Castle? The kids were old enough to be a hassle, but they didn't mean anything by it. They ran around in the rosebush-filled moat, and I wrote stories in my head about their adventures to tell them at bedtime. You read all of the little plaques, noting the history, and I stared at the chair Wellington died in, a simple high-backed armchair, facing the window, where he could stare out over the narrowest point in the channel. I said he was watching France, like a guard dog who doesn't understand he's too old to be fierce. I wonder now what stories he was telling at the end, whether they were about war or love. I love you, Edna." A night breeze was coming in through the window, but Florence could not get up to close it. Cyril's voice changed, becoming slower and more deliberate in the gloom. The chilling clarity behind his words made her shiver more than the wind. "I don't know your name, but thank you." When James brought her the next notebook, it remained empty. He went on to treasure that mosaic of love that she had made and read it whenever he felt lonely.
That was really beautiful, man.
Oh, thank you.
Gosh.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that I really connected with. This visiting your mum when she's ill. I've done quite a lot of that over the last decade, and you did capture it really well. That sort of anxious space where you can't really be yourself because you're being a carer for someone that you only know as a carer, and trying to make them think in your very modern way. But old people are gonna old. That's what they do, and I think you did capture that really well.
Thank you.
I thought it was really lovely. I was writing down just the little details of the daily life, and even things like just the names that you chose were whole worlds in themselves, with Edna and Florence and Cyril kind of really conjured up a very specific place and time. And things like Walmer Castle, I thought you just really kind of made it feel very real and very visceral. And I think, like a lot of people, we're all dealing with aging parents and caring for them, so it's very relatable and heartfelt territory.
Thank you.
There was a section right at the beginning where you talked about the chiming of the bluebells, and it really strongly reminded me of one of Caliban's speeches in The Tempest, when he's talking about the sound of the island, just the natural life of the island. And he says, sometimes it's as though 1,000 instruments twanged about my ears. And it really evoked that for me, that kind of someone who's not super intelligent, but they're so in touch with nature that's what defines their perspective on the world. And
that's really lovely. Yeah.
there was a lot of natural language in there. A lot of the things you said about him were about, like his smile was like a ray of sunlight, and then things that weren't nature were nature, and things that were nature were then oil paintings, and just really, really, really nice way of using, like, counterbalancing something against itself. Just really, really nicely put together.
Oh, well, those are really nice bits of feedback. I like that a lot. It is funny, however, that you bring up that Caliban thing. So, Karin, the reason that he's done that is because he actually pipped me to that role at university. I read for that, and I was told I wasn't even worth being second fiddle. So,
Not even in
you're not of a lumpy enough freak to play Caliban. I, however, perfectly cut from the ragged monster cloth.
He has the best speeches, though. You've taught me language, and my profit on it is I have learned how to curse. That's so good.
It's also so
I always find it so impressive when people can just recite off the top of their heads. It's so cool. Yeah, but no, that's nice. Is there anything you would change, Karin, like that you would restructure, or that there wasn't enough of, or whether it didn't like lead in the right way?
Nothing that leapt out to me that I thought was wrong. I think it's a story that goes at its own pace as it needs to. So there was a slowness to it that was really right for what you were doing, and I really liked. Written down, I really like your take on the prompt, the idea of memory coming out of order, becoming a sort of mosaic, little bits and pieces that have to be reassembled. That core thought is just such a really lovely way into it. So yeah, that's, I wouldn't change anything from that point of view.
Oh, it's lovely.
I definitely have a sickness from this podcast that I'm going to call short storyitis, which is that because of how a lot of short stories go, I was absolutely certain at the end he was going to stand up and be like, "You're not my Edna, and for that you must die."
Oh yeah, I was waiting for the zombie apocalypse to come. And then it didn't. It was fine. It was lovely.
Sun comes back, he's in the chair wearing a skin.
Refers
Where's my
to James
notebook,
as Edna.
boy?
Yeah, you've unlocked the true ending. Nice.
Yeah.
It's new story plus.
The second notebook just says 5 buried, none found.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for listening and for some lovely words of feedback. Karin, I believe you've got a story for us. Do you fancy going next?
I do. Let me get it up. Okay. Ready when you are.
We're ready.
All right. Mosaic. The sun blazed like a furnace in the market that day. The tradesmen kept their meats on cold stone in the shade, or, better still, alive in the pens for the slaves of the empire to slaughter right before cooking. I had come to choose a rooster who would be roasted to mark my man's triumphant return from the latest wars. Living in the barracks, I always heard the rumours early. "A day's march away," the messenger boy had told me, barely pausing on the way to some more important recipient. "They'll be here by sunset." If it was so, and if Marcellus had kept his promise, I would be able to complete the mosaic that night, at last. It was fitting that the moment should be marked with a feast, so I chose a fat fowl from a vendor who could usually be haggled to a fair price. "I'll take the one with the 3-pointed comb," I told the merchant, "but I won't pay more than 25. The man, his arms splattered with blood, demanded 30. I counted the coins into his palm. Satisfied with his price, he nodded towards an alley behind us. "The stone is there, if you want to do it now." "I will, thank you." The sacrificing stone was a flat slab of cold marble in a rough-hewn wooden enclosure, where customers can perform this intimate ceremony in some privacy. It was the custom in the capital to let the animal bleed out slowly, offering up prayers all the while to the god of the feast. But my own gods prefer a quick death. As soon as I knew that I was alone, I twisted the neck of the rooster while it wriggled and thrashed, scratching at my flesh with its talons. When its soul departed the flesh, I felt its energy disperse into the air, and I gave a circling gesture. I spoke a gathering word. Neither the word nor the gesture is truly necessary. All that's required is the intention, but that should be strong as rock. The words and gestures help to focus the will, and I have an abundance of will, more than enough to steal the life force of a dying bird. I stored it inside me in a place I have been filling steadily over the years. In another part of the market, I found my friend Vespina buying a suckling pig for her own man. But when I told her what I had paid for the rooster, she chastised me for haggling. "Why work so hard to save his money? He has more than he needs, and we have nothing." "It amuses me," was my only answer. I relished the craft of it, to play my part so well. Neither of us had any expectations that we would ever be their wives. The Empire's generals do not marry the Empire's slaves, even after all these years. Still, Vespina was on edge today. Everyone knew that during celebrations her man would drink too much wine, and when her man drank too much wine, Vespina had to keep her face veiled for the days that followed. "You're so lucky, Ermengarde," she told me. "You've got the best of them." All the women said so. My Marcellus was so handsome, they said, so brave yet kind, they said, these women who would have taken him from me if they could. I could not find it in me to blame them for it. I would have found their lives unendurable. There was some agitation near the entrance to the market. We hastened over to join the crowds. The woman in shackles was guarded by so many legionnaires that you might have thought her a general in her own right, not a mere daughter of the forest. But she was strong and lithe, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders that had been stripped bare and were already turning pink in the sun. She would be a valuable prize for one of the men. Howling like a wild thing, she was yanking at her iron chains, but she stopped when her eyes fell on me. Could she have named me? Or did she only know that I was one of her own people, shamefully bedecked in the Empire's jewels and linen? I knew her right away, though she had been naked and toddling 20 years ago when I'd seen her last. Hilda, the daughter of Thuria, who had been my friend. The mandala-shaped scar she wore on the flesh of her upper arm would have been identification enough. The soldiers had branded her with her own father's cattle mark. It was a punishment for his resistance, although they hadn't meant to come for her family at all. They had come for mine. Every village in the forest whispered about the power that was in my father's house, and the soldiers had no tolerance for any strength that was not their own. My father's death had not been quick. Their gods are cruel. Whether Hilda knew me or not, she cursed at me now. "Traitor! Whore!" and she spat on the dusty ground. It was true, in part. I have been a whore. The soldiers bundled her away. I took my leave of Vespina and returned to the barracks, where I plucked the rooster and roasted it for hours in a clay pot with dried fruits. The sun had not yet set when Marcellus returned, stiff of muscle and complaining, as always, how he has missed the comforts of home. After gorging on the roasted bird and spiced wine, he settled into his lounge chair and sighed. "Ermengarde, I'm so glad to be with you again. It really is time for me to hang up my shield, don't you think? Do you realize I've fought in all 13 provinces? Solistan completes the cycle." "Did you bring—" "Of course. I never forget you, do I?" But he made no move to get up. "Look in the pockets of my cloak." He lay back and loosened his belt. "I would have brought you more than fieldstones," he said. "I'd rather have given you gold and silks. The silks they make in Solistan are the finest you'll ever wear." "Thank you, but I wish for nothing except to finish the work." I searched the folds of his cloak and found what I needed. Pebbles and shining stones he had collected from the roadside on his travels. Will they fit into your mosaic? He asked, without getting up. His legs seemed unwilling to move again. They are perfect. The floor of the antechamber was covered with furs. I plucked them off now, revealing the craft I had been working these 2 decades. Stones from every province of the empire, except one, were set into the hardened sand. Only the face of my flame-haired goddess was incomplete, but I added the final pieces now to make her flashing eyes, her hardened mouth. I returned to my man and climbed atop him, purring in satisfaction. It is complete, my love. Well done, Ermengarde. But his eyes were already shutting. He would claim no pleasure from me tonight. I'll look at it in the morning. There is no need, I assured him. When I was sure the drug wine had taken full effect, I put my hands to his neck and crushed the air from his lungs until his body twitched one final time and then was still. My gods prefer a quick death. I made a circling gesture with my arms. I spoke a gathering word. My intent was sharp and my will was clear. Barefoot, I trod over to the mosaic and stood upon it, feeling the cold hardness of stones from every province. These tiny pieces would connect me to the whole. The wait had been long but worthwhile, to be sure that the whole of the empire was beneath my feet, within my control. I fixed my mind on all the roads leading from this spot to the enslaved lands, and, standing there on the Capitoline Hill, I summoned all the energy I had held within me since the day the soldiers came to my home. I focused it all upon my wish. I would tear down every building, road, bridge, and person that the Empire had ever made. The soldiers had got it wrong, you see, when they split my father's throat in our forest home. Yes, there was power beyond imagining in my father's house, but he was never the wielder of it. The gift was mine. Rumbling sounds came from all around me, and through our window I could see the capital crumbling, stone by stone, brick by brick. I would be crushed under the rubble of the barracks, and I accepted my death as a fair price. Yes, I have been a whore and a slave, but I have never been a traitor.
Absolutely banging last line. Nice work. That was good. That was really good.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
I really love Roman stuff, so that gave me excellent vibes. So it was sort of set in Rome, wasn't it, with like the Capitoline Hill and all roads
Yeah,
lead to
it was,
Rome sort of thing.
it's like slightly alternative universe Rome, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool idea. I like that a lot. Again, like good names, like you mentioned it in mine, but this like the Marcellus and the Emigard and the was it Vespina, the other slave? Yeah, really like evocative stuff. And then this mandala scar on Hilda. It's I like that a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. It really conjured the place.
Hilda being branded with her father's cattle mark was a super wicked thing, by the way. That moment talking about being recognised by her scar, but then the cattle mark from her father's farm being on her, and that being like 100% certification. I was like, oh, this is dark. I'm really into it. The use of it being specifically a cockerel rather than a hen at the beginning, and that coming full circle with the exact same type of sacrifice of the cock that she has been beholden to is that's good stuff. But I really like that.
Solid foreshadowing. Really, really good.
Yeah. Also, yeah, a couple of good phrases. My gods prefer a quick death. That's yes, please. And actually, the first time that came up, not long after it, I have an abundance of will, which started to really tell us that this woman was a problem. But we're on her side, so she's not a problem. She's a hero. God damn it!
that was sort of exactly basically where I was going to start my next point, which is this: that I have an abundance of will. This kind of this quite cold, quite calculating, very filled with conviction state that she's in at this point is really through the writing, like your lexical choices, the impacts and the stresses on words. It's all in there, and it's it very much evokes her mental state whilst also still being capable of being very third person and narrating the surroundings quite dispassionately. Liked it. Liked it.
I think it does really well. Is that it gives all of the sort of droplets of the magic through, but in a way that makes it that it could go either way. It could just be a religious belief. So when it pays off and the magic does work at the end, it could be a natural disaster, or we don't know. But that magic suddenly being real makes it way scarier what she's done. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed writing her as a character. It's really funny though, because I think having listened to the podcast, I know Nico, in particular, you often write really funny stories, and I love a bit of humor in my stories. But Ermengarde has not a single hint of a sense of humor at all.
Oh, I actually thought there was one bit. Actually, it was when she gets called a whore by Hilda, and she's sort of like fair cop. Yeah, I have been a whore.
Yeah,
I thought that was. I didn't chuckle per se, but it was sort of like a wry smile. That you evoked.
She has a like sort of, I don't know, fatalistic dryness to her, which comes out
Yeah.
sometimes really does humor, but she doesn't laugh much, I don't think.
No. There was a really good sort of show don't tell moment. This is quite granular, and obviously you know that you did it and all the rest of it. Just for everybody else listening, that veiled face for days thing from Vespina to hint that she gets beaten. It's possible. It would be possible to really ham fist that, and you didn't. And it was well executed, and there were multiple moments like that through the whole thing. But that was one that really stuck out to me as like that's just good storytelling, like good writing.
I think that another really nice moment is the reveal that they're slaves. Ermengarde and Vespina, when it goes from just saying my man to well, they don't marry their slaves. It's like, oh, this is not the Spartans waiting to greet their husbands returning. This is way worse.
Much more problematic.
Well, they were both bad, I think. But
if everyone sucks, no one does, Ben. That's the rules.
Vespina also had a good line around that point, which was the fact that they work so hard to save them money. I thought that illuminated their outlook on life very quickly and very concisely. Like, how long was that out of interest? Because it felt like it was pretty tight.
It was almost exactly 1,500 words.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 1496, I think.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, as you probably know from listening to the podcast and stuff, it is really difficult to tell a big story in 1,500 words. Yeah. You can tell small stories really, really well and easily and all the rest of it. Not easily, but you get my point. But to tell a fairly epic story like that one, like it's, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of history. You are drawing on it being Rome, but you're also like changing it subtly and well. That's hard to do in 1,500 words. So I think that's worth applauding on its own. Irregardless of the actual content of the story, like you've got probably like a 2,000 word story into 1,500 words.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I was pleased with how much action I was able to fit in, whilst also giving the domestic moments their space, because I wanted that shift from what seems like a very small domestic story into something that, as you say, hopefully turned out to feel epic.
Definitely nailed it. Yeah. I think was there also just you left enough space that it could have been a natural disaster. It was like just enough space. Again, using the sort of Roman thing, this kind of, you think about like Pompeii being destroyed and all that kind of. I know that's a bit simplistic, but it will be conjured for your reader, won't it? If you start talking about disasters happening to Roman cities, they will draw a link between Pompeii and this. Whilst you were being very clear that she felt that it was her magic and she'd done this, And I love this idea of like gradually building a temple out of spite inside your opponent's home city in order to destroy their whole empire. Really cool. Top play, top play. Uh, yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot, and I liked it from the start. This idea of meat on the cold stone's good, but it's better still alive in the pens.
Yeah, which again is kind of what she's been doing with Marcella, is sort of keeping him
Exactly.
alive as her livestock all this time.
And it felt like it felt like a dead ass line when you said it, and then it became literally a dead ass line. So it, yeah, really good stuff. Really, really nice.
Oh, thank you so much.
Nico, you're fucked, mate. So do you want
all right. You keep talking about how I write funny stories. I did not.
Every now and again. Fantastic.
Mosaic. I am a mosaic. The parts of me are shards of things that came before. The pottery of lives once lived, now broken and reassembled. From a distance you might see a picture shaped, at just a glance, like a man. Some parts are missing or replaced, but filled up with the remnants of the older pottery. The picture is imperfect, but is that not the manner of the art form? Why should I be perfect, with rounded edges, when there's so much more to be found in the crumbling parts? Sometimes, when I laugh, I know the pieces that I'm made of. The laughter rolls up from the belly of my mother. It's shaped in places by a dozen stand-up comics, now rendered down to the powder that fits between my tile chunks. Billy Connolly or Eddie Izzard, a formative paste used to fix the bits that will one day make my wit. Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett, rendered artistically, sit where in some a heart might be. I can think of no better rhythm by which to live my life. I wish that I were made all through of laughter, of innocent mirth. If puns and entendre made me up in whole, perhaps I wouldn't fit with the other mosaics. But I would enjoy it. I could laugh at cock seasoning in the world food aisle without the need to clarify that I am childish. When I cook, I see the fragments of my nonna. Her hands so swift that my young eyes couldn't follow them. As salty as the sea, a lesson simply on pasta water, and yet it's there, in the artistically placed pieces of my identity. The Fuzzy Felt and Catchphrase episodes are there too. I haven't seen a Fuzzy Felt in years, but perhaps there's not space in Mosaic for something that soft. Catchphrase is a beast unto itself. I will not find it anywhere, except perhaps as an underlayer in the mosaic of my brain. Sometimes I say, "You're right!" in that iconic Irish accent, and I don't know if the recipients know that that is what that is. The mosaic of my nonna is broken in many places. A sickness marred the time I knew her, and the vibrant woman that my older family members recall is limited in my recollection. I've been told so many things that sometimes I can't distinguish what I saw and what I've heard. Is that such a problem? Her husband, my grandfather, taught me passion for the beautiful game. There are tiles of red forced to fit in places where perhaps they shouldn't be. Come on the O's, my heart screams. I didn't understand the offside rule until I was a teenager, and the game to me was very silly. Now I see the beauty in it, even if I can't remember all the players' names. From him too I got my troubles. The bits of my mind that don't line up, he passed on to my father, who dutifully and unknowingly gave them down to me. The edges of those razor shards are softened by the passing generations, but still they find purchase. I remember the anger they've caused before me. I think on the disappointment. I hope one day, when my wife and I build our first mosaic, that we don't have space to fit these. I would rather leave them out. On the other side of my mosaic, I see the quick mind of my nan. I watched her peel runner beans methodically as she resolved conflicts between her 8 grandchildren. Like a general, she was, and those parts of her I find in me and long to polish. And she was silly, too. A battery-powered fart machine adorned the kitchen where the runner bean war was ongoing. A remote secreted where she might deploy a well-timed PARP against her unsuspecting foes. I fell to that blow many times. Sun Tzu would have called me an idiot. I allowed her to choose the battlefield every time. In her also was a sense of coldness. A woman dragged up with too many siblings in the East End of London. A tough old bird, they'd call her. I slipped once, in the making of my mosaic, and broke 2 teeth free from my infant gums against the edge of a table. "What did you do that for?" was her exclamation. A sense that all are responsible for their actions, protected not a jot by infancy. But she saved my mosaic when I was young. When she told my mother she knew I was built incorrectly, that I had to be taken to a doctor. Too thirsty, too emotional. Even at a year old, she knew that I was sick. She was right. Without her, I might have been a seizure swept away into the abyss before long. Gramps left in me pieces of his work ethic, his pride in what he did, in everything he turned his hand to. His fishmonger's business was the heart of an East End market, his koi pond the heart of his garden, both kept meticulously and thriving under his command. From him, my love of James Bond and the Rat Pack, glimpses into a world before my own, placed carefully into my design by his hand. But from him or my nan comes a dark shard. Both of them, my aunt, my uncle, and my mum, afflicted by cancers. I wonder if there's a piece of pottery in me that will grow unwarranted and eventually destroy the entire display. Fear of sickness in all its forms is the patina over my entire design. I want to be an ancient mosaic, long admired by those after me. I do not want to be pulled down early, leaving bare wall behind. I want to make my own mosaics, and I wonder what pieces I can put in, what parts of my design will break off to make a new shape. And will it be my fear, my sickness? Will I make someone afflicted as I am, with dread in every waking moment? Or will I carve new pieces unseen before and force them in, making a picture that doesn't resemble me at all? And will they sing? Will they write? Will they love the beautiful game and understand the rules and know all the players? Will they be taller and stronger and better than me? And I truly hope they are. I hope that when I make my mosaic, it is the most beautiful work I can craft, and that I tend it well. I hope that it gleams with confidence and ability. I hope it never feels the need to hide any part of its patchwork design. I hope that one day, with pride and dignity, it will look at the fragments that make it what it is, and without sadness declare, I am a mosaic.
Gorgeous. Really, really gorgeous interpretation of the prompt.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
really
love. For the listeners at home who won't know, Ben obviously does. It's my grandfather's funeral tomorrow, so this has been quite heavy in my mind. This idea of what we get from our grandparents, what we take away, and that reflecting on the negative and the positive, I think is actually very important. So it was quite nice. It was nice to be able to get that out through writing, I think.
Yeah, and not. I don't feel like that was indulgent writing either. I think you were speaking to a larger point that an audience can understand,
Yeah.
and really get behind, because this concept of being a mosaic is, as I say, it's a gorgeous interpretation of the prompt, because everyone's going to feel like that in some way, aren't they? I mean, it was even in my story a little bit, wasn't it? Like that woman sort of saying how she's passing down bits of herself that to a future she'll never see.
Yeah.
This is just a part of how we understand the world and how sort of humans attain a breed of immortality. But I really loved the opening. Like this at a glance, you are the shape of a man. filled up with the remnants of old pottery. There were some gorgeous turns of phrase, really, really beautiful writing. And I also enjoyed the sentiment of the fact that there's more to be found in the, in the sort of slightly broken bits. And talking about the outside influences that form like a formative paste to fix the bits together. So you mentioned Billy Connolly and Pratchett and people like that. It just felt very real and you were speaking from the heart, but also I think everyone's going to be able to completely understand where you're coming from with that. I thought it was very well communicated and beautifully told.
I find it really interesting because for a sci-fi fantasy podcast, I think the moment you, when you said, Billy Connolly, Eddie Izzard, and then Terry Pratchett, and then you had this wonderful line about it, something else, I think, that sits in a place where my heart might be. And I just thought, I think a lot of us feel that way, don't we? That the things we love almost take the place of something inside of us that feels missing. I thought it was really interesting to kind of just put that out there in the open. And there was lots of little moments of kind of painful self-reflection, like the line gave me chills, which was like when you just said I'd rather leave them out about some of the worst bits. I think really kind of just made me go, oh yeah, I feel that.
I will say we often have connections, and it is absolutely wild that I made, because I can't help myself, made a joke about cock flavoured seasoning from the supermarket, and you had talked about cooking and eating a cock in your story. That is wild that we both got to the flavour through Mosaic.
Tasty cock this week.
I feel bad now. I should have had Florence doing something with Cyril.
That was a deleted scene. Do you remember that time you sucked me off in the Midlands?
It starts getting really fucking graphic with it. Oh Jesus! Oh, amazing. You're right about the mentioning real world stuff. I got a shock from you saying that when you mentioned Billy Connolly. Like it hit me. Like it really did, not in a bad way, just in like it put me in place very firmly in the real world.
It was like, until that moment, I was listening to you telling a story, and when you started Billy Connolly and Eddie Izzard, I was like, oh, I feel like now you're you and you're talking to me, and it just became very real.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, in a good way.
Yeah, totally agree.
Free therapy. You guys are you're working through things for me.
The last time I said something like that on the podcast, RJ Barker told me off about it. So just mind yourself, boy. The Sun Tzu would have called me an idiot. Got a big chuckle out of me.
Good.
You allowed her to pick the battlefield every time. Very funny. Very funny.
There's a little line about the fish and how they were thriving under his command that just made me chuckle as well. The image of the fish almost like as a battalion that your grandfather was commanding was great.
It was always so fascinating to me. There's the sort of, it's my first understanding of the duality of man was my fishmonger grandfather coming home and lovingly doing everything he could to care for and defend his fish.
And fish are more evil than others.
I don't know whether a koi tasty. I don't know.
We're gonna have to find out.
Yeah.
Someone email in. Who's eating a koi?
I think obviously the truth, the real beauty of this piece. Obviously there was lots of memory and self-reflection in it, but I think it was the hope of the prospective parent that was the driving force, and because there is structure to the story. It starts with you, goes into your influences, goes into your background, and then talks about the future. It does move forwards. It's not like somebody rambling to their therapist. It is a story. You change during this, the you that is the narrative you changes during this. So there is development. I really enjoyed the stuff about the prospective parent, and I think everybody feels like that to a certain degree. And there's this sort of trepidation about what bits you're going to pass on. Neither of us have kids, Karin, but I don't know if that's something that spoke to you more, or maybe it speaks to us more because we haven't had them yet. Or
absolutely. I think there's a The thing with having a child is that everything you do makes them, and
Yeah.
that's such a good thing because you've got the opportunity of making them love the things you love to some extent, but also you can break them with the best of your all possible intentions. And every choice you make can feel so momentous, you know. You get to name this child, right? You decide how they're going to walk out into the world and be called. You decide, you know, what they get exposed to at an early age. It's, you know, if you let yourself think about it too much, it can be debilitating. But then on the other hand, they're also just hilarious. I've only got one child, but my daughter, and she's just hilarious. So, you know, there's sometimes you also have to just stop thinking about it so much and just let things be as they are. But anyway, that's all getting very philosophical.
No,
Oh,
I think it's the point that the story is driving towards. I think that what's it going to invoke in people that have had kids, that haven't had kids. It's a big deal. I do have one bit of feedback because it's a gorgeous story, beautifully well told. There was a piece of imagery that I thought could have potentially been tweaked to fit it better.
Yep.
When you talk about this, the cancers in the family that are ending people's lives, and there's the fear of it being yourself. The line is something like the piece of pottery in me that will grow, and pottery doesn't grow. And that just got me a little bit, and I thought, what about if instead it's like a hidden crack, like a crack that will cause everything to tumble down, and that might.
It's much better. You're correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just that's the only tweak that I would give because I think it's really well structured, really well paced, and exceptionally well written. It's just that stuck out to me.
I went back and forth about because quite a lot of the sentences start with I, which I really like because of the repetition. I went back and forth sometimes if it was too much, but I sort of came round to the side of no, because it feels like it has that elegiac feel. And actually, when you said it was your grandfather's funeral, I thought it almost does have that you know, that funeral speech feeling about kind of we're taking the time, taking the moment. So I wouldn't necessarily change it, but it was just something I noticed.
Yeah, I wonder. That's quite an interesting question to raise, isn't it? Like how when in these kind of as you put it, like elegiac stories, like how does one keep the audience in connection with the fact that you are tethered to this story, like the narrator is tethered to the story without using I at the start. I mean, I guess you could just mess with sentence structure and things like that, but that might get, I don't know. What would
That's the
be
thing. I was going to write a note to say, oh, maybe try changing up your sentence structure. But then when you got closer to the end, I thought, well, maybe I don't agree with myself about that because actually it makes it feel more poetic and more structured in a funny sort of way. So yeah, it could go either way.
I think poetic is an interesting one because it did start out as poetry,
Oh.
and then when I started writing it, it was intended to be poetry, and then I as I was letting myself just be sort of free with what I was saying, it was losing some of that form, and then there were certain thoughts that I didn't want to go back and alter to fit structure, so it quite quickly lost the pentameter that it has at the beginning and became just sort of free form. But maybe maybe that even works narratively because it starts structured and loses it.
I can't believe you didn't understand the offside rule until you were a teenager. That's the real takeaway for me.
I just didn't care, mate.
Well, I still don't understand it, but please don't explain it to me because people are always trying to.
I wouldn't dare. It's just I suspect like if you grow up in like an English school and you play for the football team and stuff, you learn pretty quick because you get caught offside so much that you're like, I need to stop this from happening to me over and over again.
Meanwhile, I'm going, why is he whistling at me?
If you're watching an English football match and there is a goal, you're usually okay if you bluff it. You just go, "Was that offside?"
Yeah, it's always a marginal call.
Don't worry, VAR will help you.
Slow the game down.
Everyone's favourite bit of sport technology.
Crikey. Karen, you were here for the moment that we turned into a football podcast. I bet you're thrilled about that. This has been what a gorgeous treat for me. Those were two very different, very lovely stories, and
that's just yours. I think a mighty trio.
The epicness of yours, Karen, and then the heartfeltness of yours, Nico. It's very much appreciated. What interesting reactions to the prompt. Quite distinct, and yeah, loved it. Really good. Karin, before we close out this story episode, would you mind just telling people a bit about you and your work and where they can potentially follow you online to make sure they never miss anything of yours?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm Karin JR on Blue Sky. I also have a Substack, which I'm slowly cooking into gear. So you can find that at Fantasy and Politics, my two signature obsessions. So those are the two landmark places you can find me. I used to be on Twitter quite a lot, but I'm no longer there, and I will never post to X. No such thing. So yeah, Blue Sky and Substack are the two best places to find me. And
Brilliant.
in terms of other stuff, I've got a story shortly. By the time this podcast comes out, it will probably have come out on Horror Tree. Sorry, on 100-Foot Crow, which is a little drabble, and I had another drabble published recently on Horror Tree. So if you like tiny little bits of juicy, lovely storyness, then you can look for me there.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that we disseminate some links to those. So do let us know so people listening will be able to find it easily. Well, I think you can probably tell that we're going to have quite a lot to talk about in the next episode. So join us in the interview where we'll be digging into, pretty much everything about storytelling with Karin. Thank you, Karin Robinson.
See you in a week, you saucy minxes.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?